Episode 92 of the Joel Fleischman Happy Hour podcast. Today we are joined by Doug O'Rourke of Biewer Lumber. Doug is the vice president at Biewer Lumber. He's been there 42 years, lives in St. Clair, Michigan. Biewer Lumber has 6 sawmills producing 1 billion feet of board lumber, 3 treating plants producing pressure-treated lumber, as well as fire-retardant lumber and plywood. Doug, appreciate you taking the time to join Joel and myself today.
I'm glad to be here.
Welcome on, Doug. Welcome to Happy Hour. Cheers.
I'm a little jealous that you got a beer and I don't, but we'll get through it.
We didn't brief you. A happy hour at some beers and mandatory.
I'll be better prepared next time.
Thanks for coming on. So, are you a animal hunter? You must be. I see a lot of background.
The Biewers are big hunters all over the world. I don't hunt. It's kind of a good formula because they can be off hunting while I'm working, so they like that.
So it's more office decorations for the Biewer family than anything.
Yes, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Wonderful. So let's get into it.
All right.
You're a lumber guy. You were that way out of college. You have how many mills, and you're the vice president?
I started working for a lumber yard when I was going to college, and I never had enough sense to get out of the business. But I've been around here a long time, seen the company grow quite a bit, and it's been fun.
When you started the company 42 years ago, how large was the mill and who did you sell to?
We didn't have any sawmills. We had a few treating plants and we did business primarily with LBM dealers kind of across the Midwest. And, we've kind of grown from there, but I've seen the company, I don't know, it was probably $50 million company when I joined them and we're a little bit larger than that now. So.
Fair enough. I'm sure you are. And you have 3 plants. You do not own any of your own logs, correct? You buy the logs. You don't own
we don't own a lot of stumpage. Our first mill was in Michigan. We have a couple in Wisconsin, and then 3 in Mississippi. We own a little bit of timber, but we're not big timber owners. The bulk of our logs that come into our mills, we either buy stumpage where we own the right to cut them from the state, the federal, the counties. Or we buy open market wood from producers. So it's a combination of both those.
Drexel, what is our relationship like with you at Drexel? I've been to your Prentice plant.
You have, okay.
Several times through many renovations, actually. I've been there I shouldn't say several. I would guess 3 to maybe 5 times with builders. It was always a wonderful tour. Seeing those red pine logs fly through the mill. And then the treater plant was pretty fun, middle of nowhere up there in Prentice.
It sure is, yeah.
So is that what we're primarily buying from you these days? Is that red pine?
The bulk of what you're doing out of the mills is, we put an SPF stamp on it, and that's the bulk of what you're doing. We do sell you some southern pine out of the southern mills. And we're going to start producing MSR shortly, so we probably can do some more with that state-of-the-art truss plant you guys have got. So, but the bulk of the relationship would be SPF out of primarily the Prentice mill, and then treated lumber out of the treating plant in Prentice.
Let's do a little 101. We got a couple of things to cover, but we don't have a lot of time. But a little 101 on lumber. So let's walk, for those that don't really know what we're talking about, even if they do it at a little bit of a level, what's coming out of that? What is coming out of that Prentice plant that's coming into our yards? What is that? What is that kind of log? What is that kind of?
It's a heavy percentage of red pine. This is product that was planted in the 40s, 50s by the CCC groups. We came through in the late 1800s, early 1900s, cut all the white pine off. So this is primarily plantation pine that was planted by these groups. And most of our cuttings are really just thinnings where they're selectively going in and pulling out rows.
About around 100 miles of northern Wisconsin. I mean, it's fairly local.
We bring wood from the Upper Peninsula. We bring some wood from Minnesota, but the bulk of it is probably 100 to 150 mile radius of Prentice.
Prentice, if you don't know, is somewhere in the north central region, I guess I would call it, of Wisconsin.
That's a great way to describe it. Yep.
So we're using northern. If you've been up north, we're getting trees out of those forests in a thinning process. They're 70 years old, it sounds like, mainly, which is, they're not that big. If you think of these logging companies and they're 4-foot diameter logs, right? That's how we think. What's the average diameter of some of those?
The average, what we call small end diameter up at Prentice, would probably be about 9.5 inches.
Yeah, way smaller than you think.
Oh, it takes a lot of logs, a lot
Way
of.
smaller than you thought.
Sure, I'm thinking like 30, 40.
Those old days where you saw those big 4-foot
Yeah.
logs, that is really a thing of the past, other than in some very, very specific areas out west. So
9.5 inches. That's crazy.
Yep.
Right. And then you can probably explain it better than me. So that log comes into you and then explain that laser process. How do you decide what to cut out of that log? Let's do two things. I love the historic way you guys did it and the way you do it now. Can you tell me when you started versus how you do it now?
Well, when we started, we were bringing in what they call tree length, which can be up to 45 foot long, and we merchandise the lengths at the mill based on sweep of the log, taper, what you need to cut, demand, those kinds of things.
By hand, right?
No, it was all automated.
Okay.
Yeah. Almost pretty much everything in the mill is run by computers and scanners. I mean, we can override it, but
42 years ago it was that way.
Well, when we first built that mill in 1990, it was set up that way. Yes.
Oh God.
Now it's been improved greatly.
I'm thinking 42 years ago was like 1940, right? I just forget how old I am. I'm like, oh shit, yeah, that's.
Well, I mean, the sawmill industry has evolved. If you saw our new mill, our new state-of-the-art mills in Mississippi, you would be amazed at just the amount of computers and scanning and there really aren't many human decisions made anymore.
Right. So the log comes in very much quicker than you think. This little 9.5 inch log, and it almost instantly gets scanned and then what I call lasered. And they take out 2x6 out and 1 2x4, right? Is that kind of?
Well, the first thing to do is to go through a debarker and pull most all of the bark off, and then it transfers down to some decks that are going to feed it into the main sawing line, and it's scanned numerous times, and it'll basically take that log and determine what you can get out of it, and it might be 15 boards out of a log, it might be 5 depending on or 3 or 4 depending on the size of the log. And some of the determinants that we've made on what we want to cut, but it scans that log, it chips the 4 sides and then goes through a saw box that splits it into 2x6 or 2x4 or 2x8 or 4x4s, whatever we happen to be cutting. So we set the parameters, we kind of tell it what we want it to cut. We can drive some strategies, but basically we're taking round logs and making square wood.
And then it automatically drops to that unit again. No humans touch that in the entire process.
No. It's what they call sharp chain, which is a single pass. Once the log feeds into the mill, it feeds all the way through till it basically goes into a stacker. The old sawmills where you saw a carriage where they were running the log back and forth with big logs, there are still some of those, but those are typically smaller mills.
How many seconds does that take from the log coming into the factory to being on a unit?
From when it comes through the debarker, which is the first phase, depending on how full the decks are, it could be anywhere from a log that goes through the processor in 10 minutes. It could be 40 minutes, depending on how the logs are.
It's extremely fast. I mean,
we like to say it can be a tree on Monday and it can be a piece of lumber coming to Drexel on Friday.
Yeah, it's a very extreme process. It's wonderful. Could you explain to me a little bit about, outside looking in, a treated board is a treated board. The board that I see at Home Depot, Menards, and Fleet Farm is the same that you get at Drexel. I know you don't feel that way. I know I don't feel that way. I know that's not the truth. Could you speak to me a little bit in layman's terms, the differences? Because again, a treated board's a treated board, isn't it?
Well, I mean, there are some differences in the treatment, but it's pretty much all the same. The differences come in the quality of the lumber that goes in.
So how does Drexel or you define the quality of the lumber?
Well,
how do you guys know the quality of lumber that comes in? Like you said, it's all about the lumber that comes in.
As you know, wane, which is bark or missing edges on a lumber, is allowed under the grade. For 100 years, lumber was cut with a fair amount of that. And over the last 20 or 25 years, there's been 20 years anyway, there's been a real push to appearance grade. So we target what we call a rough green, which is how it goes through the primary sawmill, to produce a product that has limited wane. We're trying to create as much of that select cut product, which is our signature brand for appearance grade products. And we target towards that. And you'll get that grade, you'll get a straight just number 2, and then you'll get the industrial grades, which are the lower grades used for packaging and pallets and things like that. And we can set the tolerances, how much wane we will allow, all those kinds of things. to determine, what we
explain-
want. We're still taking an imperfect input in a log and trying to push out, a piece of lumber that's the same every time. And that doesn't work that way.
Right. My dad always was fond of saying, without knots, where would the bird sit?
There you go. There you
A
go.
knot is really just a branch, right? So again, it's an imperfect thing. But could you explain to me the grading system?
Yeah, grading is in North America or the U.S. is controlled by a set of standards, and all dimension lumber, 2x4 through 2x12 timbers, is basically graded for strength. It's not graded for appearance. So they take lots of different factors from amount of knots, size of knots, whether edge knots, some wane, some what they call slope of grain, a bunch of different factors that affect it structurally. And that's how the lumber grades are developed. Number 1 is stronger than number 2. Number 2 is stronger than the lower grades 3 and 4. And that's the basis for lumber grading. It's all run by a third-party inspection system. If you're an accredited mill.
Computers are humans.
Yes.
Is it a computer doing that work, or is it human?
All of our mills now run off a computer grading system. If you'd have come to our mills 10, 15 years ago, probably when you went through, Joel, you'd have 4 or 5 graders visually grading the pieces.
Not employed by the mill, always third party?
No, they're employed by the mill, but the third party comes in routinely, unannounced, and does an audit and make sure you're pulling to grade.
Right.
Everything now is done with a computer graded system. It goes through a scanner that scans the piece about every 1/4 inch and tells it what grade. And it's with all the different grades that are out there now, it's difficult for a set of humans to do that.
Right. It was really interesting, in my opinion, when I started in the industry 40 years ago.
Yep.
My dad would actually, he's probably just bored with me, I would actually go up to the number 2 pine product, and he'd say, pull out all the clear lumber and put it in the clear pile.
Yep.
Because we play a premium. So lumber was actually always graded, and still is, but it's technically not 2 and better.
Correct.
Right. Or even southern yellow pine. So I used to remember I had farmers that would come in and they would dig through our pile and actually find the southern yellow pine boards within the unit.
Because they're a lot stronger. Yeah.
Yeah, because they were a lot stronger. They're building a fence, or that's how their dad taught them, or whatever, right? And you'd have to wait till they pick through to find those southern yellow pine boards. Carpenters didn't always like that, obviously.
Right. It's a little harder to work with, yeah,
a little harder to work with, but that was part of it. It's spruce, pine, or fir is allowed, and it was always 2 and better, which really meant, on a Saturday morning, I would dig through the number 2 pile. I'd find 5 boards, and I'd throw them on the select pile. And that was just how the grader did it. I don't know if he was hungover or drunk or just forgot.
Well, I mean, some mills might not have the capabilities to pull a higher grade. Maybe there isn't enough to.
Right. All that, whatever that was. But what has really happened in our industry, and people say, hey, lumber quality has really went down in 30 years. Us old timers, and again, part of that is just being an old timer, and everything was better back in the day, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's part of it. But also part of it is the truth. It's actually what my dad has always said: 2 and worse, right? Which is. Which is what really that means is the industry has gotten so better and so much more profitable. The computers at the mill level now have all these different grades. They know when it's a good board. That's not going into the 2 and better pile. And then I think also the appearance grade has really taken over solely based on the Menards, Home Depot box shoppers. They wanted a premium looking wood. They weren't concerned about the strength.
Right.
And now that has taken over the industry, even on commercial jobs or large scale jobs, where everybody wants this. I almost call it a veneer looking wood, right? They want the wood to almost look fake. They're so
like you said, the home centers started this trend because the homeowners were in there picking pieces off the pile there, and they weren't going to pick anything that had wane or bark on the edge.
Right. So which does not matter for construction. It just has a bark to it. Okay.
Right. If you're going to bury it behind OSB and drywall, if it's got a little wane, it's still very practical. But as you said, the builder yards, the LBM business, a lot of them have converted over to wanting a better appearance grade, and that's affected the just straight number 2 quality also.
Right, it's actually hurt the number 2 quality.
Oh yeah.
Because so now it's like within the grade itself, there's number 2 quality, and then there's appearance grade quality. So now what's left of the number 2 really is the 2 and worse, not 2 and better.
Absolutely, you're right.
So if builders are saying, hey, the quality's come down in lumber, that's why. Mark, does that resonate with you being a non-lumber guy? that make some sense?
It does make sense. I think you've described it. It's really kind of changed the lumber business in the last 15 or 20 years, but it is what it is. And it's forced mills to kind of change how they do things. Our focus at really all our mills is to target the higher grades, and you're going to get some all the way down, but you want to target as much of the higher grades as you can.
Right. So that's actually a kind of a fun conversation, just in a real small nugget. The lower lumber is actually not to be produced by the mills when you think about it.
Oh yeah.
It's much less profitable. They want, you think about steaks or whatever in the industry, right?
Pallets or whatever. Yeah.
Diamonds, right? You always want the higher grade. So if they can get that out of that log, they're not focusing on that. So that's also why at times lumber pricing can be up on MSR, but down over here.
Right.
MSR is a very high grade of lumber.
Yep.
Almost no knots, very, very strong. That's what we use in our truss plants, is what Doug was alluding to. So very interesting in that lumber market. A lot of, it's not games being played, but there's games within the game,
the mills have just had to adjust to the market demand, and it's a changed market demand, and
the mills have to figure out who they are. Some mills have went to the industrial pallet. Some guys like Biewer have went more to the premium appearance grade. They were maybe ahead of the curve. Okay, let's move forward a little bit. I kind of want to stay, Mark. Are we doing okay, Marcus, with the industry terms? Or are we going to move to some deeper subjects?
No, we're good.
You're interested in this?
Yeah.
Are you?
Yep. Okay.
It seems like, I'm sure Doug and I are like, God, we could talk about a million other things versus
we could. Yeah, we'd probably go on for a few hours.
Yeah, Doug felt like this is not what I was expecting, talking 101, but I think that's what a lot of people are interested in.
Gotta set the baseline though, right?
But also, like, I'm guessing this is fairly interesting to you.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure Doug and I are bored out of our mind right now. But if it's interesting to you, we're going to continue doing it. Could you explain the pressure treated process? Like, again, I think a lot of people, Marcus, do you know what pressure treated means? Right, treated with pressure, right? But like, how does it actually work? Like, I think people are super confused or have never even considered what that means, right? They just know it's green wood that somehow got treated, right? Like, that's all you really know.
Yeah.
So
basically, prior to the advent of pressure treated lumber, and it's been around since the 30s, but it's really, before that, the only way to really protect wood was to coat it, and that doesn't protect the whole piece of lumber. You cut it, it checks, those kinds of things.
And I'm old enough to remember I don't remember the term, but you grease them up. What was that?
You could creosote them or burn them or whatever. Back in prehistoric times, they used to burn it to char them because that acts as an insulator and helps protect.
Right, yeah, you think of it in nature, right? That wood's charred, that's actually strengthened it. That's how they protect themselves from a forest fire. But I remember a lot of creosote. Like our 8x8s and stuff would be creosote, which is literally just the slimy, gross grease. It just greased it up is all it was. That was the protector to go in the ground.
So the pressure treating with what we call waterborne preservatives, which is really the current recipe, other than for some utility poles and rail ties and things like that, basically uses a mixture of chemicals suspended in water. And we load the lumber into a cylinder. We pull a vacuum to kind of open the cells of the wood. And then we fill the cylinder with the solution and force pressure up to about 200 pounds per square foot, or per square inch, excuse me. And it forces these chemicals down into the wood. And over the course of, it depends a little bit on temperature and a few other variables, but over the course of 24 to 48 hours, these chemicals fixate themselves to the wood. They actually attach to the cell walls. So what that means is they're there. You can't separate them. They're apart, and that's how you can provide pressure treated lumber with a lifetime warranty. You can build basements out of pressure treated lumber, all those kinds of things. So the chemicals are downforced into the wood. They bond themselves to the wood. We pull the excess chemical back out. We run it through an initial drip, and the product's ready for application unless it has to be dried after treatment. So it's a very, very good sound system. The product works very, very well. It's been tested for darn near 100 years in places like Hilo, Hawaii, where the severity of both insect termicides and fungal decay is astronomical, and the product works very, very well.
Doug, how long does that take? The whole process?
From door to door in the cylinder, anywhere from 45 minutes to a couple hours, depending on some size of lumber, what you're trying to do, retention levels, those kind of things.
It looks like a big canister. If you think about it, it's almost like how you pressure peaches or something, right? Like it's pressure treated.
Yeah, our cylinder will treat about a truckload of lumber. They're 6'6" by 80 or 90 feet.
One way to think about it is almost like a Traeger grill, right? Like basically you load it up. Somehow you could suck all the moisture out, like with your big syringe, and then you bring the moisture back in with the chemicals.
Correct. And it's a lot of water, a little bit of chemical. It's about
Right.
1 to 2% chemical. The rest is water. The water carries it into the wood where it bonds itself, and then the water migrates back out to whatever the equilibrium is with where it's going to be applied.
So I think most of our viewers and listeners are maybe enough to be dangerous in this. So I'm kind of taking the 101, 202 approach.
Okay.
Well, one thing questions I've always gotten, which is a little deeper question. You cut that 4x4 in half, and that thing's not treated all the way through. I want to return it, or that thing sucks. They didn't get all the treated because the middle is completely white wood and then the outer edges are green.
Yep.
Is it treated all the way through? What causes that? Can you kind of explain what's going on there?
Well,
it doesn't happen. There's like white in the middle.
It's not always 100% penetrated, we call that, and that can depend on a number of different factors. One of which is the size of the lumber. If you're looking at a 2x4 and it's 100% sapwood, it's going to be 100% penetrated if it's treated properly. If you take a 6x6 that's a bigger piece of lumber, usually going to have heartwood, which is not as susceptible to decay or insect, you won't have 100% penetration. We have minimum penetration levels based on size of lumber and some other factors that we have to meet for this product to qualify. And same deal, there's a third-party inspector that comes in and starts drilling holes, in the units of lumber to check for penetration and retention. So
now, are you going to have, right? That guy does that. Well, Marcus just heard, right? He's going to build a deck. He cuts that in half. He's like, oh crap, it didn't penetrate all the way through. Is that something that's under warranty? Are you going to have problems? Like, what's the deal?
It is completely under warranty. You don't need to field treat if you're building a deck, a fence, anything like that. The only time we require field treating is on a permanent wood foundation, and that's just building in an extra level of safety and performance. So no, you do not need, for any applications that you're going to sell, you do not need to field treat cut ends.
Which also means, you said it's under warranty, which I might take it as bring it back to the lumberyard, they'll give you a new one. You're more saying, no, it's fine. You can use it as it is. You're still protected under warranty, correct?
It has a lifetime warranty, quite honestly.
Right. Even if it's not green all the way through,
Correct.
It's perfectly fine.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. Whose lifetime? Mine, yours, the user?
It's the user, so we can all say, is that 5 years or is that 50 years? But
I think
if the product's treated properly,
it will last.
It will last longer than anybody that's buying it.
You're not going to have a problem with what you're saying.
No.
And I can tell you don't have claims. You're totally good.
No.
Does that make sense, Marcus? Yeah. Interesting, because that does come up from time to time.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
Yep.
So let's go to the meat, what I've been waiting for, and you already bathed it. Permanent wood foundations. You live in one. I'm intrigued by it. We do off-site construction, which means, Doug, and for people that don't know this, and I would think everybody here probably knows listening, if you've listened to any of our podcasts, we're very obsessed with off-site construction. We bought Blinker Construction a few years ago, or
Yep.
Blinker Building Systems. We're probably the leader in Wisconsin, and I know we're the leader in Wisconsin, if not the Midwest in off-site. We want to bring wood foundations to Wisconsin. It's very rare here in this state. You live in one. Talk to me, brother.
Well, I've built about a dozen of them, and I think we're living in maybe our 6th one. So I'm certainly a strong advocate, both in selling them, but well as building them and living in them. And you know what we say? Wood basements are not for everybody. They're only for people that like warm, dry, comfortable, below grade living space. I mean, there's other advantages, that maybe you don't have to have a concrete crew out there. You're saying framing crew can do it. Usually they're quicker. There's lots of advantages. The real advantages go when you go to finish one. But the real benefit of wood basements are the comfort level that they provide. You don't get that damp, musty feel that you get in a lot of masonry basements.
Right. And for us, with offsite construction, we can build those panels at our factory,
Yep.
set them. So yes, speed and efficiency.
Yep.
We're not ripping the forms. We don't have to, we don't have to hire another guy. We're going to go there. We're going to cap it. Then we're going to backfill. Then we're going to come back. I mean, we're talking weeks we're saving. And then where do you think the price comes in versus concrete? That's
we get asked that question, and it probably depends on complexity of the basement, corners, things like that. But most of the analysis we run, a wood basement compared with a block or a poured basement probably comes in anywhere from 10 to 15% less to 10 to 15% more. So it's not really a cost factor. Now, when you go to finish it, there's tremendous cost savings. You're not furring out a wall and losing square footage and all that kind of stuff. So if you're going to finish it, that you'll definitely see cost savings. But you're just going to build a basement and not do anything with it and compare it with concrete. If you can control it in a panelized plant like you guys have, you can probably develop some efficiencies and be more competitive.
We think it's a wash or less expensive all of our analysis. We have not launched our program yet, but everything that we're looking at, it's a wash or less. Not with soft cost, like you said, actually finishing your home, putting the studs in.
Oh yeah.
Speed and efficiency, saving construction cost, saving vendor management. None of that. It's literally dollar for dollar. It comes in cheaper on a hard cost or the same. So I have one question, just as a guy that's super interested in this. What do you recommend for that outside membrane? Right. So you have so how it works. Let's do the cross section. Build that out. We'll start on the inside. That's the easiest. You have your 2x6 or 2x8 stud, correct? 16 inches on center, just like normal.
Well, could be 12 inch. It depends on some factors, backfill height more than anything.
It's the structural. It's really just a structural wall, like any wall we would do in any house.
Yeah.
No, but it's 2x6 or 2x8 again, based on structural. It's nothing crazy. Yeah. And then it's a 3/4 inch treated ply. What do you use there?
5/8 or 3/4. Once again,
I've seen 5/8 a lot. I like 5/8. Yeah. My biggest question is, what's the membrane you're using? You doing that?
And it's a system. And it starts with the footings. You're typically not pouring concrete footings.
I think it's really important that first floor is also a system, right? So this isn't new. Like the first and second floor of your house is a system as well. Now we're just talking below the grade.
It's an engineered system that's designed to support the axial loads from above and support the soil loads. And the way that it works is the first floor and the basement floor acting in diaphragm resist those soil loads. And so that's a little different than a concrete basement, but it's an engineered system that has 2x6, 2x8. Hell, we've done them with 2x10 and 2x12 studs. Plywood on the outside that's caulked. And then unless it's a very well-drained soil.
Just caulk that joint is what you do. You caulk
all the joints are caulked.
You caulk them, okay.
And then there's a 6 mil visqueen you can use. There's lots of different. All that is a watershed.
Right. And almost, to me, it's almost.
What's keeping that basement dry?
It's almost cosmetic.
Right.
People don't understand, water goes down, it doesn't go sideways.
Your footing is comprised of an aggregate, pea stone or gravel or sand.
Water wants to go down.
And you backfill halfway up. So the water, as long as gravity's working, the water is going to drain down, drain, and either be pumped or drained to daylight. So you don't have water building any hydrostatic pressure against that basement wall. It does a couple of things. It gives humidity problems in a masonry basement, and it usually finds its way into a basement through a crack or something like that.
Right, which we don't have. We've solved all that.
So the system works very, very well. It works well in poorly drained soils, well-drained soils, walkouts, flat. I mean, it really works well. And there's probably 1 million of them in North America to date. Now, that's a very small percentage of the overall homes.
Why hasn't it taken over the marketplace?
That's a great question. There are pocket areas. We have pocket areas in Michigan, parts of the Midwest, out in the West, in Canada, where it's very popular. Probably the biggest thing has been lack of advocates, whether it's teaching people how to do it, supplying the material. Just nobody's really embraced what it takes to do it. Like, for instance, you have to have the first floor and the basement floor on before you can backfill. Well, that's totally different than a masonry basement. So somebody has to kind of plan for that. Where we've seen strength, it was typically where a lumber yard or a regional or national chain got really behind it and really pushed it. Back in the day, Wicks was pretty darn good at it in a lot of markets. Now they're gone, obviously. And we've got some really strong areas, but where they're used and popular, people love them. It just takes somebody that can pull all the parts and pieces together.
Yeah. And for whatever reason, they've done it's kind of that one of those internet things. You Google it, it's a bad rap on the internet.
Yeah.
Wood sounds scary in your basement. Yeah. Concrete sounds better. It's kind of weird. If I had to build a boat, I'd build it out of wood before I built it out of concrete.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you think about that way?
It's one thing if you're building a fence or a deck. It's another if it's your basement. But the products, they will last longer than anybody that's building if you build them right.
Yeah, correct. Absolutely. which is crazy.
Kind of like the same thing with offsite though, right? Like it's kind of a new kid on the block or just a thing that's, not as well.
You want to be the only one in Fond du Lac County with a wood foundation? Like, well, not me. It's somebody that's kind of like NIMBY, right? Like not in my backyard, like not doing it in somebody else's house. So we have to, I think, bring it to the market, test pilot, have guys like Doug promote it. I'm actually thinking about changing the name, Doug. That's really the first person I've ever really told that. I'm thinking about going EFF, Earth Friendly Foundation. Let's even take the word wood out of it just to help I'm a psychological salesman.
Yeah.
And then we can say EFF and we can just say F it, right? We just F it.
Well, I mean,
I like Earth Friendly Foundation. It's very friendly to the earth using wood. I mean, God made it. Let's reuse it.
if you bring somebody into a wood foundation, especially if it has a wood floor, they will be amazed at the comfort level and no need for dehumidifiers and all that kind of stuff.
We're a huge component of the wood floor as well. Walk me through the foundation and walk me through for the floor.
Okay.
Because that's where even where me, super proponent of this, I get a little stuck like, ooh.
Oh yeah, you and lots of other people. So it's an aggregate footing. Pea stone is the easiest one. It's a perfect footing, but it allows moist water to pass through it. On top of that sits a footer plate, which is the first piece of wood. It's usually 2x10, 2x12, depending on whether there's brick and all those kinds of things. And then the stud wall, which will either be 2x6 or 2x8, usually 12 or 16 inch on center with plywood run horizontally because it's stronger if you cross veneer it to the studs. And all the joints are caulked. There's a 6 mil visqueen that's draped over it. And you apply the first floor. You either pour a slab for the basement or you put a wood floor in.
Explain me the wood floor, just like the first floor. It's just joist and.
It's basically the first one I ever built back in 1982 had a concrete floor. And it was a great basement. I loved it. Every other one I've built has had a wood floor. And essentially you're laying 2x sleepers down on the stone, 4, 5, 6 foot on center. And then it's a 2x4, 2x6 floor joist system. This is all foundation grade treated. And then 3/4 T&G, just like you're doing on the first floor. And so there's no difference, other than it's treated, there's no difference between that and the floors above it. And the floor will cost you a little bit more money than pouring a slab. But if you want to go total system, total comfort, it's the way to go.
And then you hang that with hangers, or do you
because it's buttoned up against the stud, so you got soil pressure on one side. It's sitting right on a sleeper that's sitting right on the aggregate footing. So yeah.
I wonder, and I'm guessing we could build those panels, floor deck panels, right in the shop and bring them down.
Yeah, I guess I'd have to think about it. I mean, there's lots of panelization of the walls, the floor. You're talking usually you could panelize it.
Yeah. That may drive the cost down because we could get that done real quick.
Yeah. You definitely on the walls, I think, could bring efficiency.
We see most of the efficiencies in offsite on floors.
Yeah.
So I'd have to agree it's the same way. We throw the sleepers down.
Yep.
We panel. Now I put them down at post the walls. You would build that post on or before.
You talk about interior walls, or you put the exterior walls are all up before you put. There's guys that have done the floor first and then.
I think in our world with offsite, we would set those panels first and then bring them walls up to them. Would go and that would go extremely quick. Yeah. Extremely quick. We have to train our guys how to get corners right, but
it's all about training. Whether it's an architect or whatever, it's training the contractors, your lumberyard people.
Since you sell it to us, would you be on the panel to help us launch this? I
would help you launch it. We over the years, Joel, have looked for somebody to really jump on board with this because it's a great system. It just has lacked evangelists to work it all the way through the system. If you guys as Drexel said we want to have an impact in Wisconsin, we think this is a great system that we could use our resources and really bring it to market. I'll help you with that.
All right, you can be John the Baptist, our evangelist, okay? I don't know if you're a Christian guy, but you be our John the Baptist.
Okay, I can be that. I've been called worse.
Honey and locust and camel hair, and you just go sell wood foundation for us, okay? Go tell the world. Yep. All right, so we're out of time. That one really quick, as they always do. Last question I always ask everybody. You have a huge, big, giant billboard, Doug, somewhere, anywhere in the country, tons of exposure. It can have anything on it. What's on it and why?
What's on it? You know what mine would be? Pretty simple. Wood is good.
Explain.
It's. I mean, everybody loves wood. we're seeing it come into now commercial with the CLT. Everybody loves wood. There's lots of different applications. We embrace designing and building with wood, and we think there's a romantic value to it and aesthetics, and just we like wood certainly over concrete and steel. And I'm not throwing stones at those. Those have their place, but we like wood.
I think it's God's greatest natural resource.
Yeah.
Right. It's a renewable, and not only natural resource, it's a renewable natural resource.
Yep.
It's a wonderful, wonderful product.
And now with the CO2 sequestration, it's going to even be more in, certainly in the spotlight.
Well, Doug, why don't we bring you back on after we've done our first FED house? How about that?
Sounds like a plan.
All right. Thank you for coming on. Appreciate your time, buddy. Wood is good.
Thanks for the opportunity, Joel.
Thanks, Doug.
92, we're out. Peace.
Bye now.